John Perlman
on 702.
3 to 6 p.m.
16 past 4. Let's now pick up on something that I was talking about last Friday after 5 o'clock, in fact, because we'd had a conversation about the fact that Water and Sanitation Minister Pemi Majordina, in the company of Tshwane's Executive Mayor Nasipi Moya, were out at the Rooiwal Wastewater Project. And this is something that has been an absolute open wound for the people living in the area of Hammanskraal and places close by, where lots of money was spent on the wastewater project. It was never done properly. Then people started getting sick. It was established that the people who died of cholera had not, this was not because of water that had been provided to them, but nevertheless, they were put at risk because of this facility not working. And there are other examples as well. Disaster out in Mogale City, that was covered extensively by News 24. And then the massive crisis out in the Mfuleni municipality in the southern part of Gauteng. So I asked this question, and we're going to bring on to the show in a moment. Somebody responded offering an answer. I said, I get that the work is difficult and it's got to be done carefully and it's got to be done properly. All of that is clear. But is this complicated technology, and is it beyond the capability of the many, many excellent civil engineering individuals and companies that we have in our country? And my next guest called in and said, well, I've got some thoughts on this. So we welcome to the show Chris Campbell. He is himself a civil engineer, but he is also the CEO of Consulting Engineers South Africa, better known as CISA. It is a voluntary association of consulting engineering firms. There are more than 580 companies that consider themselves members of CISA, and they, between them, employ around 19,000 people. So I think we've got a pretty clear picture of the range of the experience that my guest is about to share with us. Chris Campbell, welcome, and thanks very much for giving us your time. I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but it seems to me that this is well-worn and tried and tested technology that many South African entities and individuals are capable of delivering and maintaining. If I'm right, why are we making such heavy weather of this?
Good afternoon, John, and good afternoon to your listeners. And, allow me to very quickly explain. So first of all, if this was purely a technical problem and a process, it would probably have been sorted a long time ago.
Yes.
What we have here, unfortunately, is bad actors getting involved from a corrupt perspective, which set the process back, because I know that there were moves afoot to get the project underway, and there was hardly any delivery. And what it also points to is, if you just take this as an example, it falls under the purview of Tshwane Metro.
Right.
They would of necessity have needed to have the requisite engineering expertise in-house to manage the project, along with Department of Water and Sanitation at the time. Now, they may not have all of the capacity, and it's important then that to extend that engineering capacity, that you commission the services of consulting engineering companies who have the requisite expertise. Some of that and much of it did not happen. And lots of money was spent, but there was hardly any delivery. Because the process is clear. What should have been done, it is the who and why did they not, and how come we are not meting out some consequences, because this kind of behavior cannot continue.
So if we look at this as a problem, we've got Rooiwal, I've referred to Mogale City and Mfuleni, and I'm sure this is replicated in other metros and smaller municipalities around South Africa, Mr. Campbell. It's fair to say, is it not, that we have more than enough excellent and experienced consulting engineers, civil engineers, to implement something that obviously has to be done well, but the technology itself, as I understand it, is not that complex?
John, you're totally correct. I mean, the technology, we have the requisite expertise locally to
Yes.
fix the problem. Our problem is with our procurement processes and the decision making that goes along with which companies under whichever entity is now having to make the decision. Have they vetted those companies? Absolutely. Have they done enough risk management to profile them to ensure that they will actually deliver? And you know, should we not be moving away from what we have in our infrastructure procurement process is appoint the service provider who is the cheapest?
Yes.
The age-old situation of Afrikaans expression, goedkoop is duurkoop. Many lessons learned. If you combine competitive pricing with a requisite expertise and a track record of delivery, you have a better chance of success. But I think some of those steps were overlooked. In some instances, I would say deliberately so. And maybe other instances, it's a case of not knowing what you don't know, because there is a shortage of that depth of capacity within the public sector.
Tell me this. Let's talk, Chris Campbell, a bit about maintenance, because obviously a regular excuse offered for the failure of this kind of infrastructure, and I think it's true of some of our water systems as well, is that infrastructure is old. Well, my understanding is everything gets old, including all of us. But to get back to being serious, all infrastructure, be it within your house, on your street, or providing services for a larger entity, will eventually wear down. But that would be massively accelerated, like a family car, if you don't maintain it. What's going wrong there in general, from what you can see? I mean, do you need consulting engineers heading maintenance departments? Do you need other kinds of managers? Where's the gap?
So, John, I think the analogy that you make to your car, whether it be new or old, it needs maintenance. Infrastructure is no different. And what has happened, and despite there being some regulation and guidelines in the public sector for regular and ongoing maintenance, because the fact of the matter is, as public sector entities, you are responsible for the life cycle of that infrastructure.
Yes.
Which is not just the time you build it and politicians come along and you do the sod turning and we take pictures, but you got to make sure that there's ongoing maintenance so that it maintains the functionality for which it was designed. And, you know, at some point, it may become non-functional because the capacity is constrained.
Yes.
When you have more urbanization. So then you need to upgrade and renew.
And expand, now, perhaps.
The problem here is there was hardly any focus on maintaining it, and there was the assumption that, this will last forever, which is not the case. And this is the unfortunate thing. Now, what we should realize, and we should have realized, is we don't have the kind of money or the economy to rebuild everything new. So best we look after what we have for as long as possible, extend the lives. And I think the unfortunate thing is that the focus on maintenance tends to be lessened because it's less of an opportunity for our political actors to have a photo opportunity. Maybe we should make that the new photo opportunity.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation, and maybe if you run things down, there's always the chance of another big new tender for either repair or expansion or rebuilding or whatever it might be, and there's more money sloshing around. But let me understand this then, finally, Chris, and ask you about when there's an acknowledgement that we cannot, ons kan nie meer nie, this can't continue in that way. We get interministerial task teams and we get announcements and we get all of that. Mfuleni very much comes to mind. But at the point at which there is an acknowledgement that what we're doing and more of the same is not going to work, do members of CISA get called in? Do the experts who could have done it right the first time round get brought in to help, or do we have another round of failed contracting?
Well, I think, John, the unfortunate thing is we probably need to look at our procurement systems, because everything and all of the work needs to go through the due process.
Yes.
And understandably so. But I think in our new Public Procurement Act, we need to look at systems that are more efficient, because the tender process takes far too long.
Mm-hmm.
It's fraught with many areas of flaws, and we need to find a way of working together as public and private sector more constructively, and dispense of the trust deficit that might have crept in, let's say, back with the 2010 World Cup and those stadiums.
Right.
We need to realize that as a collective, we have a problem. We need to address it. And the private sector has the necessary expertise and numbers to complement the responsibility that resides with your public sector.
Thank you so much. Chris Campbell joining us from Consulting Engineers South Africa, a voluntary association of more than 580 civil and consulting engineering companies in South Africa. He's the CEO there, civil engineer himself. And if you want to join in this conversation, because I'm struck by what he said right at the beginning of the